How's it going everyone? Nathan here and welcome back to my YouTube channel where in this video we're going to be talking about how to invest in the stock market as a 4-part series, obviously starting with part 1. But before we get into that, I just wanted to talk about the name change that we've gone through. We're now going zero to hero, and I find that that name itself actually vibes more of my journey, all the things that I've been able to learn through this past few years and being able to share that on the social media platforms such as YouTube, Instagram, and any others that you can think of. So I'm really excited to go through this process and film a lot more content and post it on all the different platforms so you can see and maybe even learn a thing or two that can help you with your own journey. So new light, new mic, new me. So let's get into the series. With part 1, I actually want to go through a lot more in terms of what the stock market actually is. It's quite often that you hear a lot of people talking about this type of stuff and you kind of want in, but without actually knowing what you're investing in, it pretty much is exactly the same as jumping into deep water with both feet in. You don't know how deep it is, but you're gonna find out the hard way. So by going through this series, you're gonna be able to start off with part 1, understanding what the stock market is, and moving all the way through each part of the series to finally making your first investment and actually turning that into a consistent investment. You're gonna hear people say it's both a good time and a bad time. The market's gonna go up, the market's gonna go down. Every single person has an opinion. I myself am just one of those people. But all we know is that in 2020, there's been a lot of fluctuations. In January, February, we hit our all-time highs, only with March and April hitting 30–40% drops to one of the biggest crashes that we've ever seen. But at the same time, when everyone thought it'd go lower, you are now actually back up to some stocks being at all-time highs. The real winners of the pandemic and also 2020, where they could be, for example, Kogan, Zoom, Amazon, Shopify, all of those stocks who really have hit it out of the park. But at the same time, like I have mentioned, it really is easy to fall into mob mentality. Every single person next to you at work, at home, is actually picking their favorite stock, and you want to do the exact same thing. So with this series, we're definitely going to get into it and we're going to help you actually understand how to do it in the best way. So first of all, what is a stock market? You can kind of think of it as a marketplace where investors like you and me actually go to buy and sell stocks, which essentially are businesses listed on the stock market exchange. Now, by buying these stocks, you're actually being given partial ownership, obviously to the extent of your shares, of the actual companies themselves. So think of companies like Coles, Woolies, those are kind of retail ones, Adairs, or even tech stocks that are rising really fast, such as Afterpay and ZipPay. Every single country actually has their own stock exchange. So for example, the US has theirs, we have ours, China has theirs. All the businesses and all the companies that go public in that country are held within that country. So for example, Facebook is actually held in United States, even though it's used globally. It actually shows the actual stock exchange that it's a part of, which is the NYSE, or the New York Stock Exchange. Now, as Australians, all of our businesses and all of our companies are held on the ASX, which is the Australian Stock Exchange, where essentially there are roughly around, at this point, 2,200 publicly listed companies, which could actually go from startups all the way to your biggest, largest banks, such as Commonwealth Bank and Westpac. So when you hear all the market news, such as the stock market has crashed, or the stock market index has dropped 5.3% by the end of the day, that doesn't actually refer to any individual business, but the market as a whole, which is all the companies within the market grouped together to form an index, which actually tracks the market as the whole. So you may have heard of certain words such as the All Ords, which is the All Ordinaries, and that tracks the top 500 ASX listed companies, or even the S&P 200, which is actually the Standard & Poor 200, which tracks the top 200 companies in the ASX. Every single company holds its own individual piece of market share, and once again, we're going from those real small startups who have just listed themselves all the way up to the top big companies such as Commonwealth, Westpac. Actually, a little fun tip that all of our finances, our financial industry, and our production industry actually do make up 50% of the top 100 companies in Australia. So you can kind of see where our economy really lies. So now that we understand what the stock market is, we actually want to know how it really works and how we invest our money. So once again, think about the stock market like in a marketplace, like an auction house. People like you, people like me, we're going there and we're negotiating prices. Some people want to buy and some people want to sell. All of this happens almost instantaneously, and at the same time, the price of it every single minute, hour, and each day is going up and going down. So that can kind of go based on good news or bad news. Good news being a certain company has actually struck a deal which allows them to expand their reach, and the investors essentially look at that and give it a higher price. So that's essentially the value of what they perceive. And bad news can essentially mean the pandemic, which means that people aren't using the services and the services essentially fall down a little bit, which means the value drops a little bit as perceived. So this stock market isn't really a place that you can go to, but at the same time, it's a place where you sign up. It goes through an online broker where people actually register their trades online and electronically, and that's why it happens instantaneously. So once again, someone's buying and someone's selling, so that automatically has to match. Once the buyer's bid actually meets someone's asking price, that trade happens automatically. So really, what's the next step? How do I invest my money? So funnily enough, if you actually do have your money invested in a super fund, that money and you are actually already investing into the stock market. The super funds and superannuation is pretty much a group of people who are investing your money on your behalf. So even though you think that you might not be investing in the stock market and it's a trap, you kind of are doing it already, but you just don't know it yet. But realistically, we all want to do it ourselves and give ourselves full control, because we understand that superannuation is something we can't actually touch until we hit our preservation age. Whereas the money that we invest ourselves can actually be sold at any point in time before that. So moving forward, this initial video was to kind of set the tide and actually transition us into our next video, where we're going to go through what broker should we actually use and the pros and cons of each one. So moving closer and closer, but giving a very detailed understanding to allow you to best understand how to invest your money in the stock market. So obviously, if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to like the video, and also if you have invested your money, comment down below what your very first stock purchase was and how much you invested into it. And if you haven't yet put any money into the stock market, how much do you actually want to put in as your first purchase? Make sure to comment down below. And lastly, I plan to be a lot more consistent in terms of my posting, whether it may be on YouTube or whether it may be on Instagram. So make sure to subscribe to my channel if you want to see upcoming videos where we talk about budgeting, productivity, and finance, or even just keeping track of this 4-part series, which will be coming out progressively in a couple of weeks and months. I really appreciate your time watching this video, and let's keep following the journey.